Good morning.
Good morning, teacher. You are audible.
Can I start?
Yes, yes.
A warm good morning to all. Today we are going to the third session of the today webinar on Introduction to Digital Signal Processing for Audio Signals, organized by UGC Stride Component 1 in association with PG Department of Computer Science, Sri Shnaram VT Bhattathiripad College, Manambetta. It is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome our guest, Dr. Anita Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Government Engineering College, Palakkad, for today's session. I am Satyabama, member of UGC Stride Component 1 and Assistant Professor of History, VT Bhattathiripad College, Manambetta. I welcome each one of you present today to this webinar on Introduction to Digital Signal Processing for Audio Signals. Dr. Anita R. received her BTech degree in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Calicut University, Kerala. She completed her ME degree in Communication System from PSD College of Technology, Coimbatore in 2013. She received a PhD in Information and Communication Engineering from Anna University, India in 2018. She is currently working as Assistant Professor in the ECE Department of Government Engineering College, Palakkad, Sri Krishnapuram. She has 4 publications in international journals, 7 national conferences, and 3 international conferences. Her research interests include communication systems and signal processing. Her topic for presentation is Signal Processing, Perspective of Carnatic Music. On behalf of PG Department of Computer Science, Sri Shnaram VT Bhattathiripad College, I heartily welcome you, ma'am. With immense pleasure, I welcome all the faculties, students who are here to attend the webinar. Also I welcome Subha Iyen, Assistant Professor of Computer Science, VT Bhattathiripad College, for vote of thanks to this session. Once again, I welcome Dr. Anita ma'am for today's program. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful introduction. Good morning to one and all present here. Welcome to the session on research signal processing perspectives of Carnatic music. Basically, this session is mainly focusing on theoretical framework rather than mathematical analysis. I hope you will enjoy the session and you will get more information about the audio signal processing after this lecture. Let's move on to the session now. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the session. So nature has endowed this universe with many beautiful life forms of so many different shapes, size, and abilities. Most animal forms have the ability to produce sound, and some of them even have capability to communicate using varied sounds. Man is unique in that he can express his thoughts using sound. The ability to express through the sound has evolved into an art which we call as music. Music can thus be defined as an art form that arranges sounds in a fashion that follows certain natural principles and provides that inner special feeling of happiness and contentment. So in our day-to-day life, we come across different types of sound. and we are well equipped with a mechanism to understand different types of variations in sound pattern. A mother talking to her kid has a different voice compared to that of a kid. Do you ever think why person have different voice? Before that, we'll see what is a sound. Can anybody answer what's a sound? What do you mean by a sound? A sound is nothing but it's more than the back and forth motion of air molecules. Okay, take a look at the animation of the air molecules in this pipe. See that those black dots are air molecules that are made to move by vibrating the piston on the left. We can see there are regions where the molecules are clustered together. So here the regions where the molecules are clustered together, and these are the regions that are having the normal pressure, that is having the pressure higher than the normal pressure, and they are traveling towards the right. These regions are called as compressions. In between the compression, there is a region called as rarefaction, that is the regions where particles are far away from one another, and where the atmospheric pressure is where the pressure is lower than the atmospheric pressure. We call this traveling pattern of compression and rarefaction as the pressure wave or sound wave. So if we plot the pressure against the piston, you can clearly see the pressure wave moving rightward. So this is your sound wave or representation of the sound. Sound wave is nothing but a pressure wave. So this represents your amplitude, and number of cycles per second represents your is your frequency. Well, how do we hear? So this shows the anatomy of a human ear. This consists of a pinna, that is the outer ear. Then we are having an external ear canal. Through tympanic membrane, it reaches the inner ear, which mainly consists of cochlea. So in our inner ear, the cochlea enables us to hear subtle differences in sound coming to our ears. The cochlea consists of spiral tissue filled with liquid and thousands of tiny hairs, which gradually become smaller from outside of the spiral to the inside. So each hair is connected to a nerve, which feed into the auditory nerve bundle going to the brain. The longer hair resonate with lower frequency sound, and the shorter hairs resonate with higher frequency sound. Thus, cochlea serves to transform the air pressure signal experienced by our eardrum into the frequency information, which can be interpreted by the brain. And here you can see here the cochlea actually act as a our inner ear actually act as a filter banks. So the outermost part is eligible or is able to detect the high frequency components of this in the sound wave, and cochlea the medium frequency, and the innermost ear is able to detect the low frequency. So this shows the visual representation how the sounds travel through the cochlea. This cochlea consists of many hair cells, and these are connected to the nerves, and these nerves carry this frequency or the frequency information, which can be further interpreted by the brain. So our ear is nothing but a digital signal processing system, which consists of filter banks. Now we'll see some of the basics in okay. Now we'll see some of the basics. What's meant by loudness? So the phenomenon of the sound depends on the amplitude of the sound wave. We have seen what's sound wave is nothing but a pressure wave, and this represents our magnitude represents our amplitude. The phenomenon of the sound depends on the amplitude of the sound wave. If the amplitude of the sound wave is large, then the sound is said to be loud. And this amplitude or this loudness is proportional to the square of the amplitude of the vibration. That is, your loudness or intensity is proportional to the square of this amplitude. And if the amplitude of the sound wave becomes double, then the loudness of the sound will be quadrupled. It is expressed in decibels. So sound above 80 decibels appears to become a noise to the human ear. So it is unbearable. Now we'll see what's the pitch of a sound. So pitch depends on the frequency of vibration of waves. If the frequency of vibration is higher, frequency means number of cycles per second. Okay? If the frequency of vibration is higher, we say that a sound is shrill and has a high pitch. On the other hand, if the sound is said to have lower pitch, then it has a lower frequency of vibration. A bird usually produces a high-pitched sound, whereas a roaring of a lion is a low-pitched sound. The voice of a woman has a higher pitch than that of a man. So what's the difference between the loudness and pitch? So these two phenomena seem to be same sometimes, but they are not exactly the same. The pitch of the sound is our ear's response to frequency of sound, whereas loudness depends on the energy of the wave, as I have mentioned in the previous slide. That depends on the amplitude of the sound wave. So in general, pitch is the reason behind the difference in the voice quality of the different individuals. So it's the pitch which differentiate one voice with the other. So this diagram gives an idea of the difference between the loud and the pitch. Here, if the amplitude of the wave is increased, the loudness increases. But if the number of cycles per second is increased, the pitch increases. Hearing threshold. The young adults should be able to hear the frequencies from 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz. About 20 kilohertz and below 20 hertz are inaudible to humans, but some animals can hear those sounds. So the most important frequency of speech and language are from 250 to 8 kilohertz. The voiced speech of a typical adult male will have a fundamental frequency of 85 to 155 hertz, and that of a female is 165 to 255 hertz. That is, for a female, the pitch is higher compared to that of a male. So what's now the difference between a pitch and a fundamental frequency? Fundamental frequency is a physical property of the sound. We all know that the speech signal is generated by glottal pulses, which are generated in our vocal cord. Then the glottal pulse from the vocal cord reaches our vocal tract. From there, it is coming out as a speech. So the fundamental frequency is a physical property of the sound. In case of speech, the number of glottal pulses that are produced in a second. It is usually measured in hertz. But pitch is a perceptual quality of the frequency. That is the way our auditory system perceives the frequency. So there is a difference between pitch and the fundamental frequency. Fundamental frequency is actually generated, and pitch is what our human ears perceive. So it is measured in mel. So this shows the relationship between the pitch and frequency. We can see that the pitch and frequency is not linearly related, but logarithmically related. But for frequency below 1000 hertz, pitch is almost similar to that of frequency. Afterwards, it's follow a logarithmic scale. Now we'll move on to music. Music is an art form whose medium is sound. So the essence of a music can be said to be the relationships of a sound. So the term note in music describes this pitch and the duration of a musical sound. So the frequency of the notes used in the music usually lies between 30 hertz and 5 kilohertz. First, we'll go through the notes in the Western music, or Western music first, then we'll move to the basis of Carnatic music. So in Western music, we have 12 notes, namely C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, and B. Another term which is most frequently that we encounter in music is an octave. So in music, an octave is the interval between one musical pitch and another with double its frequency. Say if one note say if note C is having a frequency of 440 Hertz, the note 1 octave above it is 880 Hertz, and the note 1 octave below it is 220 Hertz. In Western music, we'll use the equal temperament scale. That is, here you can see the note frequency chart. Here 8 octaves are shown here, and the 12 notes in each octave and their corresponding frequency is shown. Here you can see the note C is having a frequency of 32.70 in octave 1, and it is doubled when it reaches the octave 2. Similarly, all the notes, you can see their frequency is doubled when you go up 1 octave. That's what I have mentioned in the previous slide. Okay. So this frequency, that is between C in octave 1 and C in octave 2, you have 12 notes in between them. So this double frequency is equally divided among these 12 notes. So the frequency difference between these two adjacent notes will be 12th root of 2. Similarly, these two will be 12th root of 2. Similarly, we'll have the 12 notes from C1 to C2. Okay, so this ratio is fixed for a Western music. So such a scale is called as an equal temperament scale. Now we'll move on to Indian music. So Indian music is broadly classified into two. There's Carnatic music and Hindustani. Hindustani music is predominantly practiced in northern parts of India. Carnatic music is mainly concentrated in southern regions of India. So the basic elements of Carnatic music are Swara, Shruti, Tala, and Raga. Swara is nothing but a selected pitch from which the musician construct the scales, melodies, and ragas. Swara is almost similar to the note that I have mentioned in the previous slide. Shruti is the smallest gradation of the pitch available. That is the smallest pitch that can be identified by the human ear. That is a Shruti. Tala is the rhythmic cycle. That is the number of beats in a particular musical piece. Raga is nothing but the rules for setting up a melody. So these are the four basic elements in Carnatic music. Apart from this, there are a lot of other things. Actually, Carnatic music is a vast subject, but we'll consider for this particular session, we'll consider these four elements now. Swaras, as you know, they are notes. There are basically 7 swaras: sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. Shadjam, Rishabam, Gandharam, Madhyamam, Panchamam, Devadam, and Nishadam. They are arranged in the order of increasing frequency in musical scale. Of these, notes sa and pa are invariable, whereas swaras ri, ga, dha, and ni have 3 variations, and ma has only 1 variation. So these swaras occupy, that is the variations occupy various different frequency position in an octave called as swarasthanas. So here we can see sa is having, sa and pa having no variation, ri, ga having 3 variations, and dhani also having the 3 variations, and ma is having 2 variations. But even though there are the 3 variations of ri and ga, this R2, that is R1, so R1, R2, R3, the 3 variations of Rishabam, and G1, G2, and G3, 3 variants of Gandhara. But R2 and G1 has coincides, or they have occupy the same frequency position in an octave. Similarly, R3 and G2 occupies the same frequency position in an octave. So instead of 16 swaras, we'll have 12 swarasthanas because of this overlapping in this frequency spectrum. Similarly, the dha combination D1, D2, D3, and Nishadam, N1, 3 variations of Nishadam, of which D2 and N1 occupies the same frequency position, as well as D3 and N2 occupies the same frequency position. So this graph shows the various frequency positions occupied by the different swaras in an octave. So the scale of swarasthanas used in Carnatic music is shown here. So this R1 is called Shuddha Rishabham, R2 Chatushrudi Rishabham, R3 Shatshruti Rishabham. Similarly, M1 Shuddha Madhyamam and M2 Pradimadhyamam. Shuddha Devadam, Chatushrudi Devadam, Shatshruti Devadam, and Nishadam, Shuddha Nishadam, Kaisika Nishadam, Kakali Nishadam. That is the variance of Ri, Ga and Dani notes. Here we can see that in this is the major difference between the Indian music and the Carnatic music and Western music. In the previous slide, we have seen that the difference in the frequency from C to C sharp is square root of 12th root of 2, and this ratio is fixed. That is, here also the frequency ratio is 12th root of 2, 12th root of 2 likewise. But here we can see the frequencies are related by the ratio, and this ratio differs from one note to the other note. Here it is not fixed. Such type of musical scale is called as just intonation scale. So this forms the main difference between the Carnatic music and the Western music. In Western music, the notes have arranged by a fixed frequency difference, but here it depends upon the frequency ratios, and this frequency ratios differs for all notes. So such a scale is called as a just intonation scale, whereas there Western music we have used the equal temperament scale. Even though the difference is very subtle in just intonation and equal temperament scale, but a trained human ear can actually perceive it. Next, we'll move to raga. So raga is a backbone of Indian music. So raga, Ranjayanti iti raga, that which colors the mind is called as a raga. So raga is nothing but a set of rules for framing a melody. So this is nothing but a predefined arrangement of swaras. So ragas are broadly classified into two, Janaka ragas and Janya ragas. Janaka ragas are otherwise called as a Melakarta ragas. Usually Melakarta ragas consist of all the 7 swaras in their Arohanam and Avarohanam. Arohanam means ascending passage of notes, and Avarohanam is a descending passage of the notes. So if a raga consists of all the 7 notes in their Arohanam and Avarohanam, it forms a Melakarta raga. If omission of more than 2 notes or more than 1 note in Arohana or Avarohana leads to Janya ragas. So there are nearly 34,000 Janya ragas in total, of which only nearly 5,000 have been explored. So as I have mentioned, Melakarta raga consists of all the 7 notes in Arohanam and Avarohanam. So you have here Sa and Pa are fixed. So you have Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma, Pa is fixed, Dha and Ni. So this is Ri, Ga combination. So you are having here Ri, Ga, but R can have, Ri can have, Rishabham can have 3 variations, that is R1, R2, R3. Similarly, Ga can have 3 variations, G1, G2, G3, of which these 2 occupies the same frequency position or pitch position in an octave. So we have only now R2, G1 or R3, G2 or G3. So out of these 4 notes, we have to fill these 2 positions. So the total combinations possible are 4C2. Next comes Madhyamam. So we are having two variations for Madhyamam. So it can either be Suddha Madhyama or Pradi Madhyama. So Ma can have the combination 2C1. Similarly, Dha and Ni. Dha can have the variation D1, D2, D3, out of which D2 coincides with N1, D3 coincides with N2 and N3. So these two pitch positions have to be filled by D1, D2 bar N1, D3 bar N2 or N3. So you are having two pitch positions and you are having 4 notes available. So out of these 4 notes, you have to fill those two pitch positions. So the combinations possible are 4C2. So here 4C2 combinations, here 2 combinations, and here 4C2 combination. So we'll get 4C2 6 into 2 into 6, that is 72 Melakarta ragas are possible. This is a simple maths behind how 72 Melakarta ragas are formed. These 72 Melakarta ragas are again divided into 2 halves. That is, the first 36 ragas have M1 note. That is, first 36 ragas consist of Suddha Madhyama notes, and second 36 raga are Pradimadhyama ragas having the swara M2. So the 36 ragas are further divided into 6. Here also they are further divided into a group of 6 ragas. This group of 6 ragas are called as chakras. So total 72 ragas. The 72 ragas are divided into 2 based on their ma swara. The first 36 will be having the swara M1, they are called as Suddha Madhyama ragas, and the second 36 will be having the swara M2, they are called as Pradimadhyama ragas. The 36 ragas are again further divided into 6 ragas, and this group of 6 ragas are called as chakras. So this gives an idea. The first 6 chakras, that is ragas 1 to 36 forms the Suddha Madhyama, and next, that is chakra 7 to 12, which comprises of raga from 37 to 72 forms the Pradimadhyama. And this shows the complete note of all the 72 ragas with their name. So here you can see within a chakra, the Riga combination remains the same. You can see this is a chakra 1. Here all the
Ma'am, you are not audible now. Ma'am, Anita ma'am. I think our resource person has some net issues.
hello, ma'am.
Okay.
Is it audible now?
No, yes, now it is audible.
From where it was, so. So from where I have to start now? Hello? Hello?
From the chakra image onwards, you can continue.
Okay, okay.
Now the screen is not visible.
Okay, okay. I'll share it now.
Okay, okay. Thank you. From this screen onwards.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Within the chakras, you will have only the Riga combination. So within the chakra, your Riga combination remains the same, but only the Dhani combination varies. Between the Shuddha Madhyama Raga and Pradimadhya Raga, consider the Raga 1 Kanagangi and Raga 37 Salagam. You can see the swara, all swaras are same except this Madhyama. Here it's M1 and here it's M2. So this forms basis of Melakarta Ragas, and any deletion of these swaras will result in Janya Ragas. Moving on to the signal processing part. Last class you might have gone through the spectrum for Fourier transform and all. I am not going mathematically into it. I'll have just theoretical meaning of what's meant by spectrum. So the spectrum the spectrum of the sound shows which frequencies are present in the sound and how much each frequency is present. So this shows the time domain representation of two waveforms. The first one is at 440 Hertz and this one is at 880 Hertz. You can see as a frequency increases, the number of cycles per second increases. Here I have taken the Fourier transform of the first wave, that is at a 440 Hertz. We can clearly see that its spectrum is having a peak at 440 Hertz. Okay. So this is the essence of Fourier transform. Just by seeing the time domain signal, we cannot find what is the frequency of the wave or what are the components, frequency components present in the wave. But if we do the Fourier analysis, we can clearly identify which are all the frequency components present in the wave. And this is again another audio which is obtained by mixing the two frequencies of 440 Hertz and 880 Hertz. Here from the time domain signal we cannot see or we cannot find what are the frequency components, but by spectral analysis we can clearly see two peaks at 440 Hertz and 880 Hertz. And can you hear the sound or can you hear the music?
No, ma'am.
No?
The sound is less.
No, ma'am.
Can you hear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So this is our national anthem that I have just synthesized using by putting the notes together in MATLAB. Here also we can see the spectrum, that is for song also. If we see the time domain signal, we cannot analyze what are the frequencies present. But when we take the Fourier transform, we can see what are the frequencies present in this signal. So this gives the essence of Fourier transform. This is the previous was 3 cases was when the music was, or when the sound was produced, or when the sound is synthesized using a programming. But what happens when we come to the real situation? So here these two spectrum shows the spectrum of note G4 played by violin and flute. So in both spectrum, the leftmost and highest peak, that is the highest peak has a frequency of about nearly 780 corresponding to node G5 that we hear. This is followed by the series of peaks to the right, spaced at equal frequency intervals of roughly decreasing heights. Here you can see peak, 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 peak here. Similar is the case of flute also. Okay. Of decreasing heights. However, the flute only has 5 peaks in total, while violin has many peaks. But these sound or these notes are played by a single instrument, right? But how come there are multiple frequencies visible in the spectra? In fact, the sound generated by the musical instrument doesn't consist of a single frequency, but they are a mixture of different frequency, which are integer multiples of lower frequencies. The lowest frequency is called as a fundamental frequency. Here, this 784, that is having the highest peak, it is the fundamental frequency, and the higher frequencies are called as harmonics. When we hear a note with a pitch corresponding to fundamental frequency, it is the harmonic that gives the note its texture and color. So the strength of each harmonic is an important aspect that allow us to differentiate between the instrument. So in general, harmonics in high frequencies give a sound a better quality, but if they are too strong, the note can sound harsh. The many harmonics in the violin spectrum usually give it a piercing quality that allows it to cut through and be heard above on an orchestra. But on the case of a flute, have lower harmonics present, or the predominant harmonics are in lower frequency region, and also the number of harmonics are less. So this gives flute a much purer tune than violin, making it more mellow tune. So the harmonics is an important quality in differentiating the music instrument, and that depends upon the spectrum and its harmonics. Now we'll see the musical features. Musical features broadly classified into or majorly divided into three domains, that is time domain features, frequency domain features, and time frequency domain features. So the audio signal that we receive must be from any instrument, whether it's a vocal or from instrument, that should be first digitized, or the process involved in the digitization of audio signal consists of sampling and quantization. Sampling makes the analog signal discrete in time domain. Quantization makes the signal discrete in amplitude. So you can represent this analog signal as a digital ones and zeros using a process of sampling and quantization. With this, we digitize the signal. After digitizing, we form the frames of the signal. Framing is nothing but bundle together the different samples. We'll see why framing is important. So frames are nothing but perceivable audio chunk. So we usually sample the signal at a rate of one sample at rate of 44.1 kilohertz. This is the standard sampling frequency that is used, that is 44.1 kilohertz. That means we'll take each sample at 0.0227 milliseconds. So the duration of each sample is very much less than the ear's time resolution. There must be a ear is having a resolution to hear the sound and perceive that sound. That is, ear's resolution time is only 10 milliseconds, but the sampling to digitize the analog signal, we take the samples very fastly, that is at a rate of 0.027 milliseconds. So this duration of one sample, which is very less than the ear's resolution time, which basically means that all things that are below 10 milliseconds, we cannot appreciate them. So with the frames, what we want to do is we should have enough time of enough duration of an audio signal so that we can appreciate that and can make sense from an acoustic perception, because it is like what we can hear. So what we'll do is that the feature that we extract are somehow related to what we can experience as a human being. So the frame size is usually set as a power of 2, because you might have studied FFT in yesterday's class. Here in FFT, we usually process the data samples, data points as a power of 2. And the typical frame values are from 256 to 8192. These are the typical value of frame size. And the duration of the frame is given as 1 by the sampling rate and the frame size. Now substituting these typical values of sampling rate and the frame size, the frame duration is now 11.6 milliseconds, which is just about the time resolution of human hearing. So if we take a single sample and process, a single sample is just of a duration of a microsecond. So we cannot get the whole information from the music signal by just taking a simple single sample. But instead of that, if we take a chunk of samples, that is which is called as a frame, now the frame duration is now just above the resolution time of the human hearing. Now we can perceive the audio perceive the audio information more clearly. So this is the idea behind the framing of the samples. Now we'll go to the feature extraction pipeline. That is after the framing, we can compute the features in the time domain and we can aggregate those results so that we get a single kind of a feature vector for the whole sound. And so it is the descriptor of the whole duration. That is, we'll calculate frame by frame. That is, for first frame, we'll calculate the mean, and second frame, we'll calculate the mean. Likewise, we'll calculate the statistics, or we'll calculate frame by frame, and we'll aggregate together to form a feature matrix or the feature vector. So this is how the time domain time domain features are time domain features are analyzed, or time domain features are formed. Now we'll see the frequency domain feature pipeline. This is also the same case as of a time domain. Here we move from time domain to frequency domain. We do the Fourier transform here. So in time domain, we see all the events across the different times. In frequency domain, we look at all frequency components and see how much they contribute to the overall sound. So here we can see in x-axis it's a frequency, and y-axis it's actually the magnitude spectrum that we are seeing here. Here we are visualizing what are the frequency components present in the signal. But this is having another problem. So the processed signal is not an integer multiple of periods. Okay, period, you all know what's meant by period. So the process signal is not an integer number of periods. So the end point are discontinuous here. Here it's discontinuous. Discontinuities at the end point appear as a high frequency components that are not present in the original signal. That is, this is your time signal, or this is your audio signal. When you apply the Fourier transform, you will get the components that are not in the original signal. This is because of the discontinuities that are present at the end of the signal, as I have shown in the previous slide. So we can remove this discontinuities, or they can remove this spurious components which are not the part of the spectrum by using a technique called as windowing. So what is meant by windowing? That is, a windowing is just a function So by applying windowed function to each frame, it eliminates the samples at both end of the frame. The edges or the ends causes the discontinuities, and these discontinuities will appear as a high frequency signals which are not present in the original signal. So it generates a periodic signal. By applying this windowing function, it generates a periodic signal. This is the example of a window that is used in an audio signal processing. This is a hand window. This is the equation of the hand window. I am not going into mathematical part. Here it's actually a bell-shaped curve with the endpoints going to 0. Okay, with endpoints here it is 0. So what we'll do? Only this discontinuities is our problem now. This discontinuities will give rise to the spurious frequency components. We should have components only here, but instead of that, we are having components here also. This we have to remove, and this components is due to this discontinuities at both the edges. To remove that discontinuities, we go for a windowing function where
Ma'am, Anita ma'am, you are not audible now.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. Now it's
Okay.
audible.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Here is some network issue that net is not stable. That's why. Okay. So if I am not audible, please inform me.
Okay.
Okay. So if we apply a window function to this whole 256 samples, and this is mathematically represented like this, that is your windowed signal, SW of k is equal to S of k is nothing but this signal into this window signal W of k, where k represents the sample. Each sample by sample we are multiplying with this window signal to get windowed signal. Here you can see this discontinuities is completely eliminated here. Now this signal is almost 0 here. Now we'll get a clean signal at the end. So this will not cause any spurious components in the frequency spectrum. So we have another problem here. So consider if we have different frame, or as consider if we are having audio signal and we are framing. So we are having 3 different frames. So the 3 different frames have glued together. So at the end points of the frame, here at the end points as well as on the beginning of the frame, we lost a signal due to windowing, right? Because we have applied the window function to eliminate the discontinuities at the end. But these endpoints will also have some information. So if we remove that, how we'll get the information? But we have to also avoid the spectral leakage also. So what we'll do? The one solution is just to overlap the frames. Instead of taking frames like this, we'll overlap the frames like this. So what happens when the frame is overlapped? That discontinuities, that is that even though the discontinuities are made 0, the information won't be lost due to the overlapping of the frames. And the frame size is given by k, and where the overlapping starts is called as a hop length. That is, the hop length is nothing but the number of samples that we are shifted to the right every time we'll take the new frame. That is, the second frame starts from here, right? So this number of samples here is called as nothing but the hop length. That is how much hop we have to go to the next frame, like that. So by overlapping the frames like this, we won't be having, or that is the loss in the signals can be actually rectified in this case of overlapping of frames. So to avoid the spectral leakage, we have done the windowing. By windowing, we eliminated the spurious components that are not present in the original frequency spectrum. But by doing so, we lost some information. In order to avoid that, we'll go for the overlapping of the frame. So that's the concept in frequency domain feature pipelining. So the same thing, after windowing, we'll go for a Fourier transform. Here we can see that spurious components that were present here were eliminated by windowing. Now we'll calculate the feature computation on each frame, and we'll aggregate using mean, median, GMM, Gaussian mixture model, and finally we'll get the feature in form of a matrix or a vector. Okay. Now we have done the Fourier transform. So the signal in the time domain, if we apply DFT, that is the Fourier transform, will give basically the presence of different frequency components in original signal. Okay. So the magnitude spectrum like this is still an image. That is, it only provides us with one picture. That is, it averages the presence of frequency components across the whole duration of the signal. But the problem here is that we know what we don't know when. That is, we know what frequency components are present in the signal. We don't know when they are more or less present, because all of them are averaged over the whole duration. The entire music signal is considered and framed, and everything is averaged and is given as a everything is average, and we get the frequency components in case of DFT. So here, there the timing information is missing. So this is a little bit problem. Here, the audio data is nothing but an evolution of frequency components over the time, and audio data is also very, very dynamic, and we want to know how different frequency components evolve over time. So we have to move from still image to video that provides information about frequency components across the time. So how can we do that? So, so we don't perform the Fourier transform of whole signal. Rather, we apply Fourier transform to the chunk of signals or a chunk of samples, which we call as frame, that we have seen in the previous video. The same thing we'll do for time frequency analysis also. So consider an audio signal like this. So consider this frame, and for this particular frame, we'll apply DFT and find the magnitude spectrum. We slide to the next frame and again apply DFT. Again until we pass through the whole duration. So in the previous case, in DFT, we take the Fourier transform of the whole signal. But in short-term Fourier transform, we'll consider the frame by frame, and we'll calculate the discrete Fourier transform for each frame. Here, as we know, as I have discussed earlier, the segmentation is achieved by window function. So we take the original signal and we multiply by window function, sample by sample, to get the windowed signal. So here I have taken the rectangular signal, rectangular window function. That is, this is our original signal. We apply the rectangular window function to get the windowed signal. So we'll calculate the Fourier transform only to this particular segment of sound wave only, not to the whole music piece, or only for the segment. So this indicates the window size and frame size. The two terms that we use or very important terms are the window size and frame size. The window size is nothing but the amount of samples that we apply windowing to, and frame size is the number of sample we consider in each chunk of a signal. Okay. In most of the cases, window size will be same as a frame size, but in sometimes when the frame size is larger than window, we'll add the zeros here. We'll append zeros here to the remaining samples, and that is called as a zero padding. So that's not that's very rare case. Usually the window size will be equal to the frame size. So we'll apply the window function and overlapping. As I have mentioned previously, the overlapping is done just to retain the important information that are at the edges. Okay. So this represents your hop size. That is, the hop indicates from where the number of samples that have to be moved to the right from where our next frame starts. That is, this is our first frame. After how many samples we'll start our next frame. That is the hop size. So from DFT, we are moving to the short-term Fourier transform. Now we'll see we'll move to the mathematical intuition. So here x cap k, where k is a proxy for frequency. Okay. And here SMK. Here SMK denotes the short-term Fourier transform, and it consists of two variables, that is m and k. Here m denotes the frame number, and k is a proxy for frequency. Or in other words, the result we get from Fourier transform is a Fourier coefficient for k frequency at mth temporal bin or mth frame. Okay. So here m denotes the first frame, second frame, third frame. Likewise, we'll calculate the short-term Fourier transform for each frame, and your m denotes the frame number here. And the summation. In DFT, we have taken the summation for the whole signal. That is, here 0 to n minus 1. Here this n denotes the whole signal from 0 to the end of the signal. But here the n indicates only the end of the frame. That's the difference. And here mh indicates the starting sample of the current frame. This frame is this point is represented by x of n plus mh. And the second other part is the windowing function that I have already mentioned. And the same exponential is multiplied as in the case of DFT. So the outputs is the one that we have to concentrate here. In DFT, the outputs are usually Fourier coefficient, which is a one-dimensional array. There is no mention of time here, and everything is arranged across the whole duration of the signal. But in case of a short-term Fourier transform, it is not a one-dimensional array, rather it's a two-dimensional array. We get a complex Fourier coefficient for each frequency bin in each firm. Or in other words, we have both reference to frequency. Also, we have gained the information about the time. So this is the equation for frequency bins given by the frequency bins in the Fourier transform, short-term Fourier transform. That is, frequency bins is given by frame size by 2 plus 1, and number of frames is given by samples minus frame size by hop size plus 1. And we'll take one example, then you will understand. So consider a signal consists of 10k samples, and its frame size is 1000 and hop size is 500. So according to the formula given in the previous slide, the number of frequency bins is 501 and number of frames is 19. So the whole signal is divided into 19 frames, and we calculate 501, and we calculate the Fourier transform at with the 501 frequency bins. So your frame size is usually the powers of 2. That is, commonly used frame size are 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, and 8192. As a frame size increases, frequency resolution increases, but the time resolution decreases. As when the frame size decreases, frequency resolution also decreases, but the time resolution increases. So when this happens because when taking large frame size, we are going to have more frequency bins. So frequency resolution increases, but larger frame size, larger chunk of time. So depending upon the application, the trade-off on time resolution and frequency resolution is to be considered. So the next STFT parameter is the hop size. That's also the power of 2, usually half K, that is a half frame size, 1/4 the frame size, 1/8 the frame size. And the next STFT parameter is a windowing function. Usually hand window is used, that we have mentioned why it's so in the previous slide. So the hanging window, when applying to the signal, will remove the discontinuities at the edge. So it will remove the spurious element in the frequency spectrum. So visualize it now. Till now we have the short-term Fourier transform, and short-term Fourier transform is a 2-dimension, and it's a matrix that has complex number or Fourier coefficients. So if we take the squared magnitude of the short-term Fourier transform, that results in a spectrogram. So here the YMK is the same matrix, but instead of complex numbers, we are having real numbers. So we can visualize YMK here using a heat map, and this visualization is called as a spectrogram. Here we can see here x-axis gives the time and y-axis gives the frequency. So here in frequency domain, in x-axis we had a frequency, and in y-axis we had magnitude in dB. But when considering time also, we could analyze the signal more clearly, or we could analyze the music signal more clearly. Here you can see the spectrogram for a saxophone. In the spectrogram, this first line, that is the first dark line, this represents your fundamental frequency component, and these are the harmonics. Here you can see the dark line that is at the bottom, nearly I think 300 kilohertz. This is actually the fundamental frequency of this saxophone music, saxophone instrument. And here what you can see is that this represents the harmonics. And
the song.
Here you can see okay, that is the placement of the signals in time. Also we can analyze with this spectrogram. I'll move the cursor with that audio played, then you can visualize it. That is in time how the notes are going.
The song.
So this is an important feature of audio signal that is widely used in many audio or music information retrieval applications. So this shows a spectrogram of a music signal and a speech signal. Clearly you can find the difference. That is, the music signal is having an entirely different spectrogram when compared to a speech signal. And this one, that is which is shown, that is this is your fundamental frequency, and others are harmonics here. So next we'll see, actually humans perceive frequency logarithmically, that I have mentioned in the previous slide also. That is humans are having
Ma'am, you are not audible now. Anita, ma'am.
Ma'am, am I audible now?
No, yes.
Yes, okay. So humans perceive frequency logarithmically. That is, studies have shown that humans do not perceive frequency on linear scale. We are better at detecting difference in lower frequencies than higher frequencies. That is, for example, we can tell the difference between 500 and 1000 hertz. but we'll hardly be able to tell the difference between 10,000 and 10,500 hertz, even though the difference between the two pairs are same. Okay, so a unit of pitch such that equal distance in pitch sounded equally distant to the listener. That scale is called as a MEL scale. So in our or ideal audio feature representation, we have seen the time domain feature pipeline and frequency domain featuring and time frequency feature using spectrograms. So an ideal audio feature should have time frequency representation, also perceptually relevant amplitude representation and perceptually relevant frequency representation. So all these representations are possible only using MEL spectrograms. So in last previous slide, we have seen just a spectrogram, but including the MEL feature also, that will give the ideal audio feature representation. Such spectrograms are called as MEL spectrograms. So this is a graph showing the relationship between the MEL frequency and ordinary frequency. That's a MEL scale is a logarithmic scale. And this is an equation for converting ordinary frequency F to MEL frequency. And this is the equation for converting the reverse, that is MEL frequency to the frequency. So here the steps are same, but the only thing is the converting frequency to MEL scale. So from the audio signal, we extract the short-term Fourier transform, then convert the amplitude to dB, that is the logarithmic scale, then convert frequencies to MEL scale. So converting frequency to MEL scale consists of 3 steps. First is the choosing of MEL bands. Second is the construct of the MEL filter banks, and third is the applying MEL filter banks to the spectrogram. So to convert, so to construct the MEL frequency bands, the number of MEL frequency bands can be chosen depending upon the application. The construction of the MEL filter banks starts with the converting the lowest and highest frequency to MEL frequency, that is given by this equation. Then we'll create a number of bands, equally spaced points, then convert these points back to hertz and round to the nearest frequency bin and create triangular filters. These are the different steps in MEL filter banks, and this results in a filter bank like this. So here we can see the lower portion is a frequency in hertz and upper portion is given in the frequency in terms of MEL. So applying these filter banks to the spectrogram that we have seen in the previous slides, that results in a MEL spectrogram. This gives a clear idea of a particular music signal in perceptually audible music signal. So so it's better to go to MEL spectrogram rather than a simple spectrogram. So MEL spectrogram applications are found in audio classification, audio mood recognition, music genre classification, music instrument classification. These spectrograms are actually features. Usually these features can be fed to the neural networks or CNN or any deep learning or machine learning algorithm, and they are used to classify the different types of audio. For ragas also, we can calculate these spectrograms and for each raga, and these spectrograms can be used to differentiate or classify the ragas when given to the different machine learning algorithms. Now we'll see the different is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the 5 important perceptual dimensions of music are dynamic. The dynamic is used to signify the degree of loudness or softness of a piece of music. The next one is a rhythm. Rhythm is nothing but a pattern or placements of sound in time and beats in music. A spectral is nothing but the instantaneous feature which are used to describe the spectral shape. Next is a timbre, the quality of the sound that distinguishes one voice or instrument from another. And the tonal is nothing but the balancings of frequencies present in the sound, or it's nothing but a principle of organizing musical composition around a central note. In each of these dimensions, we are having a lot of features. A few I have listed here. We'll see some of the important features. So dynamic, as I have mentioned, is used to signify the degree of loudness or softness of a piece of a music. It also indicates whether there's a change in volume. The important dynamic feature is a root mean square. RMS value is used to, or is a measure of energy of the signal. It can be computed simply by taking the square root or a root average of the square of the amplitude. And the next is a low energy. Low energy is used to describe percentage of frames showing the energy lesser than the average energy. So in a music signal or in any audio signal, we can calculate the average energy, that is the RMS value, and we'll find the or find the number of percentage of the frames are having the energy which are lesser than the average energy. That percentage of frames is called as a low energy. So this low energy can be used as an assessment of temporal distribution of energy, or in order to see if it remains constant throughout the signal, or if some frames are more contrastive than others. Okay, so it is used how the frame or how the signals changes from how rapidly they change from one duration to another or one frame to another, that can be calculated with the help of this low energy. And the next feature is a rhythm. So the rhythm denotes the movement of the pattern or placement of sounds in time. So the important rhythmic feature is a beat. It is a number of repeating pulse in a music. And tempo, it is defined as a speed of the music or beat that is measured in beats per minute. And attack time and attack slope. So an attack time means when a string of veena or guitar is plucked, the pattern or the sound envelope looks like this. So the time difference between the starting point, that is the starting point of the lowest amplitude to the highest amplitude, this value is the attack time, and this is an important rhythmic feature. And the slope of this point, that is it is a ratio between the magnitude difference and the corresponding time difference at the beginning and the end of the attack. And the slope of this point is nothing but the attack slope. So by analyzing this attack slope and attack time, we can find, or we can get an idea of how the pattern or the placements of the sound in time is there in a particular piece of music. Next comes the spectral features. First we'll see the spectral centroid. So as the name suggests, the spectral centroid is the location of the center of mass of the spectrum. Since the audio files are digital files, and the spectral centroid is a measure that can be used for the characterization of the spectrum of the audio file. So it is calculated as a weighted mean of frequency. The same centroid that we study in Max also, that's applied here for a spectrum. So hence the name, the spectral centroid. So the spectral centroid gives the shape of the distribution and is used to characterize a particular audio file. So in case of Carnatic music, this spectral centroid will vary on different ragas, since each ragas are having the different, has its own frequency combination based on different notes. So this shows the spectral centroid of, this shows the spectrum and the spectrogram of an audio file, and this white part shows the centroid and their amplitude. Next, we'll see the spectral roll-off. So another way to estimate the amount of high frequency in the signal is a spectral roll-off. So here what we do is that we'll find how much fraction of total energy is contained below a particular frequency, or this particular frequency is fixed, or usually taken as a 5640.53 hertz, and by research this value is arrived, this particular value is arrived. We'll see how much signal or how much portion is below this particular value. This gives an idea of a spectral roll-off. This is another way to estimate the amount of high frequency in a signal. And next comes the spectral skewness. This is nothing but a third order central moment, and it is used to measure the symmetry in the spectral distribution. This will give an idea of frequency distribution in ragas. Next comes the spectral kurtosis. This is nothing but the fourth order central moment. It is a measure of whether the spectrum is peaked or relatively or flat relative to the normal distribution. So the peakedness of the spectral distribution is given by the kurtosis. The symmetry of the distribution is given by the spectral skewness. By analyzing the centroid, skewness and kurtosis, we can get the shape of the spectrum of a particular music signal. Roughness, when when a pair of sinusoids are closed in frequency, we may not hear them clearly. So how far we are able to distinguish these two closely spaced frequency, that is estimated by roughness. So roughness is an estimation of sensory dissonance or roughness related to the beating phenomena when whenever a pair of sinusoids are closed in frequency. And irregularity. Irregularity indicates the degree of variation of successive peaks of the spectrum. We have seen the spectrum consists of many peaks. How far they are varying, or the degree of variation of the successive peaks of the spectrum, gives the irregularity. These are some of the spectral features that are frequently used in music analysis. Here I have taken the kurtosis for ragas of Chakravan. The ragas are played and spectral analysis is done, and have taken the kurtosis. Actually, the kurtosis is taken frame by frame, so we'll get a vector, a feature vector, and from that feature vector, it is averaged to find the kurtosis for ragas of Chakravan. As I have mentioned earlier, each chakra consists of 6 ragas, and here we can show, here we can see that the kurtosis follows a pattern. That is, kurtosis decreases from raga 1 to raga 6. That means raga 1 is having the spectrum with more spikes, and raga 6, the spectrum of raga 6 will be more smooth when compared to that of a raga 1. And this shows the kurtosis of the whole 72 Melakatta ragas. That is, here we can see the kurtosis follows a pattern. That is, in every chakra, the kurtosis decreases from 1st raga to 6th raga. Here you can see for all chakras. Okay, this means that within a chakra, your first raga will be having the smooth spectra, will be having the spiky spectra, and the last raga will be having the smooth spectra. So this is so likewise the analysis can be carried out on using all other features also, and this gives an this gives an idea of how the spectrum of the ragas looks like. The next character or the next feature, dynamic, sorry, it's a timbre. Timbre is a characteristic sound of an instrument, or the quality of the sound that distinguishes one voice or instrument from the another. So the first timbre characteristic is the zero cross. So zero cross is an indicator of noisiness and that gives number of times the signal crosses the x-axis or the number of sign changes. Here we can see here it crosses the zero as the x-axis, that is the first 1 0 cross 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. So how many times the signal crosses the x-axis or number of sign changes gives a zero cross. So if the signal is having more zero cross, means it is more random, or the noisiness is more in that particular signal. The next is a spectral flux. It's also another timbre feature. So spectral flux is a measure of how quickly the power spectrum of the signal is changing. It is calculated by comparing the power spectrum of one frame against the power spectrum of the previous frame. Okay. So for a whole, for a duration, for it's a music signal, for we are analyzing frame by frame, we'll calculate the power spectrum at this area or this particular frame, and we'll calculate the power spectrum on the previous frame also. So by comparing this power spectrum from frame by frame, we can have a measure of how the signal is changing. So if a power spectrum rapidly changes from one frame to another frame, means it indicates that your signal or your spectrum is more or less irregular, like that. The last feature is a tonal feature. The tonal refers to the balance of frequencies present in the sound. It is the greatest stable pitch is called as a tonic. The important tonal feature, the most important tonal feature that are considered most is a chromogram. So chromogram is nothing but the distribution, the energy distribution along the pitches or pitch class. So here is a procedure to find the chromogram. So here in the input signal, most of the steps are same except one or two. That is, here first of all we'll do the spectral analysis to obtain the frequency component. The spectral analysis that we have seen using the short-term Fourier transform, we'll convert the signal to the spectrogram. Then we'll do the frequency filtering. A frequency range of between 100 and 5000 hertz is used. Next, we'll do the peak detection. That is, only the local maximum of the spectrum is considered. We have seen the spectrum, it is having many peaks. Only the peaks which is having the local maximum wave are considered for the calculation of the chromogram. And we have fixed the reference frequency of 440 hertz. Then for we'll do the reference frequency computation. That is, how far in each frame, how far the peaks are or the frequency or is deviated from the reference frequency of 440 hertz. Okay, so after that we'll estimate the pitch class mapping, and after that we'll normalize the frame to get normalize the frame and we'll get the maximum value to eliminate the dependency on global loudness. So here I have calculated the chromogram for Raga 1 and chromogram for Raga 37. It is nothing but how the different pitch values or what is the contributions by the different pitch values in a particular piece of music. Here, as I told in Raga 1, which is having here a particular note, that is the C.
I think again, ma'am, is of having some net issues. So
Ma'am, കാണുന്നുണ്ടോ?
Yes, it's done.
Okay. So this shows a chromogram of Raga 1 and Raga 37. So we know, I'm considering only piano notes. So we'll represent a Raga 1 in terms of Western notes. So Raga 1 is represented by C, C sharp, D, D sharp, F, G, G sharp, A. Raga 37, every combination same. Only F is replaced by F sharp, G, G sharp, A. So by analyzing the chromogram, we can see that the notes that are predominant here are having more value in their pitch class profile. That is here, note C is there, C sharp, D, D sharp, F, G, G sharp, and A. The rest of the notes will be having lesser values. Okay, from if we take this as a feature, from looking at this chromogram, we can say that this belongs to Raga 1 by seeing just the pitch class profile in each class, just seeing the magnitude of the pitch class profiles, we can confirm whether it belongs to Raga 1 or not. Similarly, the case of Raga 37, here we can see that everything is same, but here F is having a magnitude of nearly 0.4, but when it comes to Raga 37, we are having the value of F hash is having a higher value compared to F. So this chromogram now can clearly identify or clearly distinguish between the two ragas. Okay. Now we'll see some of the raga identification techniques using these features. So first of all, how do people recognize raga? So first way is a non-trained person or the Rasika space. So years of listening to the tunes composed in various ragas gives the listener enough exposure. So this method actually depends upon a lot of cognitive abilities of the person. The person must be accustomed, or a person must be trained, and years of training and years of listening to this various tunes will make the person to identify, or will person to recognize the minute pitch difference, and they can recognize the raga. So what they do is that the new tune is just placed with the known ones and are classified depending on how similar it sounds to the previous tunes. This similarity can arise from number of factors like rules in transition between the notes imposed by Arohana and Avarohana characteristics, usage patterns of few notes, and gamakas. Now we'll see with the advent of digital or while moving to the digital era, automatic raga recognition has gained more importance, and a few raga recognition systems are I have mentioned here. That is a scale, depending on the scale matching, or using scale matching, swara histogram, statistical modeling, and using neural networks. So this shows a block diagram of raga recognition using scale matching. Actually, the author here provides the method with the test data consisting of 30 samples of 3 Melakarta ragas by 4 musicians, and the raga database consists of raga name and Arohana and Avarohana. So this method consists of different steps. The first step is the signal separation that separates the input signal and the voice input signal. The input music signal is first separated into music and voice. And then the second level segmentation, and this then comes the second block, that is the segmentation. In the segmentation, in this block, the first level segmentation is done by matching the signal as output of onset and offset detection with thalams in the database. So the segmentation here is done to identify what is the thalam of the input music signal. And comes the third level, that is the feature extraction. So here HPS algorithm is used for extracting the fundamental frequency and frequency components for every swara in the feature extraction. So the available frequency is mapped to swara, and the swara is compared with the swara related to raga from the database, and that is mapped to identify the raga. This method has achieved a 95% accuracy. So here they have done the singer identification also by using the HPS algorithm. Then the scale mapping is done from the frequency available in that music signal. From the scale, from the frequency available in the music signal that is matched against the ragas in the database, then the mapping is done here. The next identification using swara histogram, which is almost similar to that of what I have mentioned in chromogram. That is, what they have taken is they have taken 3 minutes of audio here, and they have converted that into the frames of 12 milliseconds. And for each frame, they have calculated the chromogram. Chromogram is calculated in each frame. From the chromogram, the most predominant swara is taken. From each frame, the predominant swara is taken, and the swara histogram is plotted like this. What is the swara histogram? So they have converted the whole 3 minutes video into different frames, and in each frame a chromogram is calculated. We know that the chromogram consists of the different or the magnitude of different pitches, and from that we have found the most predominant swara or predominant pitch class, and then we have and then we have added or then we have calculated the histogram by considering the predominant swara in each frame, and finally the histogram is plotted. And this histogram is used to train a random forest classifier. From the and 70% is used for training the random classifier, and 30% is used for testing. So this is how the raga is identified using a random forest classifier, swara histogram and a random forest classifier. And another is raga recognition using neural networks. So we have seen the different musical dimensions like dynamics, rhythm, spectral, timbre, and tonal. Of this, which one will be used or which one can classify the or characterize the Melagata ragas more? And that analysis was carried out using the neural networks. So a neural network is a powerful classifier which is motivated by the working concept of a neuron in human brain. So neural networks are computing systems with interconnected nodes that work much like a neuron in human brain. Using algorithms, they recognize the hidden patterns and correlate them in a new data cluster and classify it. So it consists of inputs, the weights, and the neuron with the bias. Here they have considered the backpropagation neural network. I'm not going much detail into the neural network. So these are the specification used. The number of hidden layers 20, and they have modified or changed the learning rate from 0 to 1 to 0.01 to 0.9. And the number of epochs is set to 1000 to 5000, and they have trained for 13 training functions like gradient descent algorithm, train LM, train GDX, like that. So different training algorithms have been tested, and the performance matrices used were accuracy, precision, and recall. And the classification strategy used was 1 versus 1 and 1 versus all classification. This 1 versus all is a binary classification. That is, you are feeding the 72 ragas into the neural network. And if it is, if you want to classify a particular raga, say raga 1 or not, that is a binary classification. But 1 versus 1 means a multi-class problem, raga 1 or which raga, like that. So you will be having 72 classes. So this shows the performance of a neural network with the mean feature values. That is, the features that we have extracted and the mean values of the features are fed to the neural network and the classification accuracy is tested. This is the performance of the neural network with the variance values of the features. And this is the performance of the neural network with both mean and variance of the musical features. We can see that here the spectral and the tonal features classifies the raga better when compared to the other dimensions. Rhythmic dynamic is a feature which characterizes the raga very less, but the spectral and the tonal will characterize the raga more. The next is the statistical modeling for raga identification. Here, the authors have used the HMM, that is Hidden Markov model, is used for note transcription. So the rules to form the melodic structure. We know that a raga is nothing but a rule for setting the melody, right? The rules to form the melodic sequence for a particular raga are well defined and number of notes is finite. So the HMM model of the raga is proved to be good at capturing those rules in note transition engraved by Arohana and Avrohana pattern. Just by using the hidden Markov models, the raga identification is done here. So even though many raga recognition techniques are there are some problems that needs to be researched. The first one is gamakas. Gamakas are the variations around the pitch. That is an important aspect of a Carnatic music. So gamakas and pitch extraction for Carnatic music, an appropriate pitch extraction module is that which can accurately represent the gamakas. It has been a severe problem for the classification system that we are not depending on gamakas of note for classification. If there is such pitch extraction system in place, gamakas can be used as an additional feature to improve the accuracy of the existing system. Okay. So gamakas assume a major role when the number of raga classes is high in the data set. The second one is skipping tonic detection. The manually implemented tonic, that is the base frequency of instrument or a singer, the manually implemented tonic identification needs to be eliminated if possible. Since the tonic identification involves some amount of error, this could be adversely affect the performance of a raga recognition system. Neither Carnatic nor Hindustani system adhere to such absolute tonic frequency. Therefore, it makes sense to build a system that can ignore the absolute location of the tonic. The third problems that need to be researched is resolution of pitch classes. Though in the previous slide we have seen, though there are 12 pins for a pitch class look ideal for Western eye, we hypothesize that a more continuous model can capture more relevant information related to Indian classical music. So dividing an octave into n bins where n is 12 can help us model the distribution with better resolution. But gamakas, that is the microtonal variation, play a vital role in the perception of Indian music. And this has been confirmed by several artists. So the transition involved in a gamaka and the note through which the trajectory passes are the two factors that need to be captured. So this can be obtained using high number of bins for the first order pitch distribution. So the resolution of the pitch classes can be further increased for Indian, that is a classic Carnatic music. Next is a comprehensive data set. The test data were constrained to some extent because of the monophonic audio. That is, monophonic audio means audio unaccompanied by a melodic instrument. So for reliable pitch detection, we require the monophonic audio, but the availability of the data set is very, very less. So the raga recognition performance are more on a comprehensive data set with more raga classes, with significant number of tunes in each across different artists and different compositions. So a comprehensive data set is not available for Carnatic music. So these are the problems that are faced in Carnatic music signal processing, and these can be further researched to this can be further researched. And the areas of further research include music information retrieval and music therapy. Music information retrieval means just we say nowadays we can sing, many apps are available where we can sing or where we can sing 2 lines and the whole song will be available to us. Such a music information retrieval system for Carnatic music is very less, but researchers are going, and we can further enhance our research in these areas so that more researches have to be carried out in the Carnatic music areas, because in Western music side, this music information retrieval is a major platform, and the more researchers are going on there. But in India, the research on Carnatic music is very less, and this can be further improved so that it enhances the music information retrieval process. And the next area that can be further researched is a music therapy. We have heard raga chikitsa, that is, certain ragas can cure certain disease, like Ananda Bhairavi raga releases tension, Bhagesri will help to cure diabetes, like that. But there is no scientific proof for it. Further research has to be done on these areas also. In fact, in some foreign countries, they have started the brain music interaction. That is how our EEG changes while hearing the music. And they have considered music as a complementary medicine also. That is, apart from giving the medicine that the patient is taking daily, they are complementing it by or they are augmenting the effect of the medicine by making them to hear the music. So definitely the music has some intervention on our body. So this is another area of the research in music signal processing. So with this, I conclude my talk. So these are the references. Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Shubha teacher.
Thank you, ma'am.
If there is any query. If there is any query, yes. You can unmute yourself, Mithun.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, is there any possibility of losing the information as a result of Fourier transform due to the formation of any singularities like that?
No, sir. That's why I've told we are taking a short-term Fourier transform and we are applying the windowing function. For that, in order to retain the information at the edges, we are overlapping the frames. Okay. So information won't be lost.
Okay. So the overlapping is supporting the formation of singularity, right?
Yes.
Neglecting the singularity.
Yes,
okay,
yes, sir.
Okay. Next. And yeah, about that neural networking part,
Okay.
is there just they have tried with the 20 layers only, or they have tried more than?
No, sir, they have tried more than, it's my own research work. I have tried with more than 20 layers, but the result was not good. So
Okay.
I fixed
Is
it
it
as 20.
is it biasing somewhere, or is it it's going keeping increasing the resolution?
No, sir. If I increase the number of hidden layers, the first thing is the computation time is getting more, as well as the accuracy in identifying the raga is decreased.
Decreased.
Yes.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yes. So we fixed it. We first tried with the 10, then 15, 20, then 25. Then we saw a sudden decrease in the classification when we tried with 25 hidden layer neurons. We tried with 21 also. Then also we couldn't find a much difference in the classification accuracy. So we fixed it at 20.
Okay. So that is a trial and error. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Mithun. Anyone? If you have any queries, you can ask to the speaker. Dr. Shaivalini, ma'am, if you have any queries, now you can ask. You can unmute yourself. Okay. I think there is no more queries. So we can.
I think the feedback link is.
Yes. No, it will be shared.
Okay.
Okay. Once again, anyone? No, I think no. There is no query.
Okay, ma'am. Dr. Anida, ma'am, has given the detailed scientific explanation about the swara, shruti, raga, how it is converted to, or how the musical signal is digitized in a detailed scientific manner. Thanks a lot, ma'am. The new research areas you have explained, very interesting, and now the computer people, I think today this session will be more interesting for the computer people, I think. Very nice explanation, ma'am.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
First of all, I would like to thank management of VTB College for giving me an opportunity to present this particular topic, because the researchers, as I have mentioned, the research on Carnatic music is very, very less. And the database, getting the database is also very difficult. I know, because I made my research in area of characterization of Melakarta ragas. So I have faced a lot of difficulty in getting this data set. So the research need to be improved in this area. Because we should first realize our heritage, and there's a lot of things that are hidden in our heritage that we have to bring to the front line. That's what I wish. Okay, the same thing that is happening in Western music. A lot of brain music interface and complementary medicines are they have developed using this music therapy and all. But here, even though we are having rich music heritage, we are having Raga Chikilsa book. Even I visited Tanjore and I had a look on that Raga Chikilsa book at the Saraboji Museum there. They have mentioned a lot of ragas and the lot of disease that can be cured using this raga, but no scientific proof like that. So this has to be changed. We have to do research and we have to bring more in this area.
Okay. I think you have musical background. And
No. Actually, I am learning now. Okay. Okay. So thank you, participants. Thank you, Shubha ma'am, Bhavya ma'am. In between, I had some interruptions in my net. So okay.
even if there is interest, the session was very interesting.
Okay. I request all participants, if you have any queries, feel free to ask to me. I am here to help for you. Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, dear participants. Okay.